At the auction, my ex-girlfriend, arm in arm with her new lover, mocked me for not being able to afford $1 million diamond necklace. With a wave of my hand, a truck smashed through the gates and dumped over 100 tons of top-grade raw diamonds at her feet. Looking at her shocked and distorted face, I sneered, "This kind of junk stone? I use it all to pave the paths in my backyard. Welcome to Apex System, an exciting story is about to begin. If anyone tells you that you can afford a large villa with a pool in Detroit just by working hard, they must be a lying piece of trash. Just half an hour ago, I, Dexter Vance, a bottom-tier loser so broke I couldn't even scrape together next month's rent, watched with my own eyes as Chloe, my girlfriend of 3 years, stepped into a brand new silver Porsche 911 without looking back. Wearing the Christian Louboutin red bottoms I had spent an entire month's salary to buy her. Sitting in the driver's seat was Bradley Pierce, that silver spoon-fed rich kid whose father's jewelry group held a near monopoly on the entire Michigan diamond trade. Bradley didn't even deign to look at me. He simply flicked a half-smoked Cuban cigar out of the window, which landed right next to my worn-out canvas sneakers. Then, he floored the gas, roaring away with my ex-girlfriend in tow. To make matters worse, my landlord had just issued an ultimatum. If I didn't pay the 3 months of overdue rent by midnight tonight, he'd show up with his 12-gauge shotgun and blast me and my pile of junk right onto the street. I walked despondently to the backyard of the dilapidated house I was renting. The place was practically a junkyard, with discarded beer bottles and rusted car parts scattered across the weed-choked mud. Despair and anger burned in my chest like a wildfire. I felt like my lungs were about to burst. To hell with love. To hell with rich kids. To hell with this goddamn world that only cares about money. With a roar of fury, I grabbed a rusted, broken iron pickaxe from the corner and slammed it into the hard ground beneath my feet with every ounce of strength I possessed. I expected the pickaxe to snap instantly or the impact to shatter my grip. However, something bizarre happened. The moment the pickaxe made contact with the ground, there was no dull thud, no flying dirt. I only heard a crisp pop, like someone bursting a giant piece of bubble wrap. Immediately after, the world before my eyes became extremely distorted. The patch of mud beneath my feet, about 1 cubic meter in size, disintegrated instantly, turning into a perfectly square, pixelated dirt block with white grid lines along its edges. It was only the size of my palm, hovering a few inches off the ground, rotating slowly and emitting a faint glow. I rubbed my eyes hard, thinking I was hallucinating from hunger and rage. Just then, a crisp electronic chime rang out in my mind, sounding like the victory jingle of an old-school arcade game. Then, an emotionless mechanical female voice echoed in my head. "System binding successful. Welcome to the real-life version of Minecraft. The laws of physics have been rewritten for you. You can now break, collect, and craft any basic matter in this world." I gasped, completely stunned. Minecraft? That globally popular sandbox building game? I tentatively reached out and touched the floating pixelated dirt block. With a whoosh, the block vanished instantly. In the bottom right of my field of vision, a translucent grid-like inventory appeared out of thin air. In the first slot, a tiny dirt icon was clearly displayed, followed by the number 1. My God, is this for real? I muttered to myself, my heart beginning to race wildly. To verify this insane idea, I turned my head toward the dead oak tree in the yard. In the game, if you want to get rich, you start by punching trees. I dropped the broken pickaxe, walked up to the oak tree, took a deep breath, and swung my fist, slamming it hard against the rough trunk. There was no pain, no bleeding, accompanied by a rhythmic thump-thump sound. Crisscrossing grid-like cracks gradually appeared on the trunk of the oak, which was thick enough to require 2 adults to encircle. When I landed the 5th punch, there was a crack, and a 1 cubic meter section of log dropped out of thin air, shrinking into a floating wooden block. The canopy above actually defied gravity, remaining suspended in midair. Incredible! Absolutely incredible! Newton's coffin lid wouldn't be able to hold him down. I ecstatically picked up the wooden block, and the crafting recipes from the game immediately surfaced in my mind. I focused my thoughts, breaking the log down into 4 wooden planks in the virtual crafting slot, and then combined the 4 planks into a crafting table. With a flash of light, a tangible wooden crafting table with tool scratches landed with a thud in the weed-filled backyard. I felt my blood boiling. As long as I had a crafting table, I could craft more advanced tools. I used the remaining planks to craft a few sticks, then took the nearly scrapped iron pickaxe and walked to the crafting table. I broke the old pickaxe down to get 2 pieces of scrap iron, not enough for an iron pickaxe, but I could start from the basics. I crafted a wooden pickaxe using sticks and planks. Then, I took the wooden pickaxe and began digging frantically into the backyard ground. Dirt blocks and stone blocks dropped into my inventory one after another. In less than 10 minutes, I had used the excavated stone to craft a brand new, cold gleaming stone pickaxe on the crafting table. Griping this heavy stone pickaxe, I felt as if I held the authority of the entire world. Chloe thinks I'm poor? Bradley thinks I'm a bug he can crush at will? Just you wait. With my Minecraft system, all I need is a pickaxe, and I can dig the earth inside out. I licked my cracked lips, raised the stone pickaxe, and aimed it at the deep pit I had just dug, ready to continue expanding my underground empire. One swing, 2 swings, 3 swings. As I delved deeper into the ground, the surrounding light grew dimmer. Just when I thought I would only find a pile of worthless stone today, my stone pickaxe suddenly struck something extremely hard. With a crisp ting, sparks flew. Immediately after, the block shattered, and a blinding, brilliant blue light shot straight out from the depths of the earth, instantly stinging my eyes. That piercing blue light almost blinded me momentarily. I instinctively covered my eyes with my hand, my heart pounding in my chest like an out-of-control V8 engine. Once my eyes adjusted to the light, and I saw what was at the bottom of the pit through the gaps in my fingers, I felt my breath stop. A diamond, as large as a baseball, free of any impurities and shaped in a perfect octahedron, was hovering in the center of the mud pit, rotating slowly. My God! This wasn't a pixelated blue icon from the game. It was a real, genuine natural raw diamond, shimmering with a lethal allure in the darkness. The image of that 5-carat diamond ring Bradley wore, supposedly worth $100,000, flashed in my mind. Compared to the behemoth in front of me, that thing was worse than a piece of broken glass. System prompt: you have mined an extremely rare, top-grade natural raw diamond. Hardness is extremely high. Current stone pickaxe durability has significantly decreased. It is recommended to upgrade your mining tools. I didn't even bother with the mechanical voice in my head. I lunged into the pit like a man and grabbed the baseball-sized diamond. It was heavy, cold to the touch, and sharply angled. I'd bet my life that if this thing were cut and polished, it would absolutely shock the entire jewelry world. But I didn't stop. If there was one here, there had to be more below. I swung the now cracked stone pickaxe like a tireless robot, continuing to strike the stones around the bottom of the pit. Ting! 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 Every strike was accompanied by a crisp, adrenaline-pumping sound. A second one, a third, a fifth. In less than half an hour, 10 top-grade raw diamonds of this caliber were lying in my inventory. Each one was larger than a pigeon egg, emitting a mesmerizing ghostly blue glow. Enough! This is definitely enough. I climbed out of the deep pit, panting and covered in mud, but I didn't care. Looking at the 10 glittering treasures in my inventory, I threw my head back and laughed out loud at the gloomy Detroit sky. Chloe, you short-sighted gold digger! You crawled into Bradley's bed for a bit of scrap metal. You never guessed that this junkyard beneath my feet is a super diamond mine that would make even the Sheik of Dubai green with envy. After calming down, I knew I couldn't just take these giant raw diamonds to a regular jewelry store. Such top-grade items from an unknown source would likely attract the attention of the FBI or even the Mafia. I needed someone who knew the trade and wouldn't ask questions about the source. I pulled a faded hooded sweatshirt from the bottom of my closet, stuffed one of the slightly smaller diamonds, about the size of a golf ball, into my pocket, put on the hood, and slipped out of the rental house under the cover of night. Veronica Hayes' studio was hidden in the basement of an abandoned slaughterhouse in downtown Detroit. When I pushed open the heavy iron door, the air was still thick with the faint smell of formalin mixed with machine oil. We're closed for the night. Whatever junk you're trying, kid. Do you have any idea what happens to people who brag in front of me? Without a word, I unzipped my hoodie pocket, pulled out the golf ball-sized raw diamond, and slammed it onto the black velvet-covered table in front of her with a sharp thud. In that instant, the entire basement seemed to light up. The cigarette in Veronica's mouth dropped straight onto the table, singeing the velvet. She bolted upright, her eyes filled with an incredulous frenzy. She grabbed a magnifying glass and pressed her face almost against the diamond, the intense beam of her flashlight refracting into a dazzling fire within the stone. My God, she gasped, her voice trembling. Perfect decolor, internally flawless. This crystalline structure, it's a miracle of nature. This raw diamond is at least 150 carats. Where did you get this? That's none of your business. I looked at her coldly. I just want cash. Can you handle it? Veronica took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. But the greed in her eyes was impossible to hide. Goods of this caliber are hard to swallow all at once on the black market. But I can contact a buyer in Dubai immediately. As a deposit, I can give you $1 million right now. Once the deal is finalized, I take a 10% cut, and the rest is yours. If you agree, the million can be transferred to your offshore account this instant. $1 million. Just a few hours ago, I was facing homelessness because I couldn't pay $1,000 in rent. And now, a mere little pebble I had dug up on a whim had fetched $1 million. Deal. Suppressing the ecstasy in my heart, I recited a string of account numbers. 3 minutes later, a crisp notification sounded from my phone. Looking at the long string of zeros in my account balance, I knew that Dexter, the poor, pathetic loser who had been trampled upon, was officially dead. Standing here now was a tyrant about to take control of the entire world. Holding the black card loaded with $1 million, I walked out of Veronica's basement. The Detroit night wind was still biting, but I felt like my blood was on fire. First, I needed transportation. I hailed a taxi and headed straight for the city's most luxurious auto dealership. Luxury Gallery. Hey, pal, this isn't a relief station. There's a soup kitchen on the corner across the street. As soon as I stepped into the bright showroom, a sales manager in a tailored suit with slicked back hair blocked my path. He glanced at my mud-stained hoodie with disgust, as if I were a walking pile of trash. Ignoring his snobbery, I locked my gaze onto the matte black Lamborghini Aventador sitting in the center of the showroom like a phantom of the night. That Aventador. How much? The manager froze for a second, then let out a sneer. $600,000. With taxes and insurance. Nearly $700,000. What? Are you planning to buy it with the coins in your pocket? I didn't bother wasting words. I slapped the black card Veronica gave me directly onto his breast pocket. Full payment. I'm taking the car now. If you don't have the paperwork done in 3 minutes, I'm going next door to buy a Ferrari. When the manager saw the offshore black card, a symbol of top-tier wealth, the mockery on his face instantly solidified. His throat bobbed, and his attitude did a complete 180-degree turn, his waist bending so low he could almost touch his knees. See, sir, please wait a moment. I'll process the expedited paperwork for you immediately. Would you like some champagne? 15 minutes later, accompanied by the deafening roar of a V12 engine, I drove that matte black Lamborghini out of the showroom like a bolt of black lightning. Pedestrians turned their heads in awe, and I felt a sense of exhilaration I had never known before. Next up was the appetizer for this grand revenge play. With one hand on the steering wheel, I typed Pierce Premier Jewelry Center into the navigation with the other. That was the Bradley family's largest flagship store in Detroit, a landmark building they took great pride in. At 9 p.m., the jewelry center was brilliantly lit, resembling a massive crystal palace. I slammed on the brakes, arrogantly parking the Lamborghini in the VIP spot right in front of the main entrance. A few security guards intended to drive me away, but seeing the $700,000 supercar, they wisely stepped aside. I pushed open the car door and walked into the jewelry center with an incredibly arrogant stride. As I expected, in the core VIP exhibition area, I saw the despicable pair. Chloe was snuggling into Bradley's arms like a Persian cat in heat. She pointed at a dazzling diamond necklace in the display case, twisting her body coquettishly. Honey, this necklace would look so good with my new dress. Please buy it for me. Bradley made a show of checking the price tag, then wrapped his arm around her waist, laughing arrogantly. It's only $500,000. As long as you're happy, I can buy you everything in this store. Not like that pathetic ex-boyfriend of yours, who had to save for 6 months just for $1,000 ring. Chloe giggled. Don't even mention that loser. Just thinking about him makes me sick. He's probably been kicked out by his landlord and is fighting homeless people for cardboard boxes under a bridge by now. Is that so? Well, that's a shame. Sorry to disappoint you. I let out a cold laugh and strode into the VIP area. Hearing my voice, Chloe and Bradley turned their heads simultaneously. When they saw me, wearing a dirty hoodie but looking perfectly composed, their faces twisted into expressions as if they had seen a ghost. Dexter? Chloe sprang away from Bradley's arms like she'd been electrocuted, pointing at my nose and screaming. How did a lunatic like you get in here? Security! Where is security? Throw this beggar out. Bradley also frowned, his face full of loathing. Dexter, did the trauma fry your brain? This is the Pierce Jewelry Center, the most high-end place in all of Detroit. Not a trash can for the bottom rungs of society like you. Get out of here. Don't dirty the floor. Several burly security guards immediately surrounded me, ready to take action. I wasn't flustered at all. I even leisurely kept my hands in my pockets. I walked up to the display case containing the $500,000 diamond necklace, and without even glancing at it, I said directly to the store manager standing behind the counter, I'll take this necklace. The room fell into a dead silence. Then, Bradley erupted into exaggerated laughter. Ha! Dexter, have you been in the sewers so long you're hallucinating? Do you have any idea how much this necklace costs? $500,000. You couldn't afford a single chip of it even if you sold all your organs. Chloe chimed in with a look of utter disdain. What a pathetic clown. Do you think playing the fool here will make me come back to you? Stop dreaming. I ignored their mockery and calmly pulled the second raw diamond from my hoodie pocket. That exquisite raw diamond, as large as a golf ball and emitting a piercing light, was tossed onto the crystal counter with a clack. Just like I was throwing a common stone. This pathetic necklace isn't even fit to be a collar for my dog. I just wanted to see what kind of trash your Pierce family's prized treasure is compared to my pocket change. The moment that flawless, massive raw diamond appeared in everyone's sight, Bradley's laughter was cut short as if by an invisible hand. His mouth hung open, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. Chloe gasped even harder, staring intently at the diamond, the disdain on her face instantly transforming into extreme greed and disbelief. The air in the entire jewelry center seemed to freeze at that moment, with only the exquisite raw diamond shimmering with a mocking light under the lamps. This is impossible. Bradley lunged at the counter like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He didn't even bother maintaining his ridiculous gentlemanly poise. His face was almost pressed against the golf ball-sized raw diamond, his eyes filled with extreme shock and a hint of undetectable panic. As the son of a jewelry tycoon, he could tell its value at a glance. This wasn't some assembled piece forced together by industrial cutting. This was nature's most incredible masterpiece. The purity, the fire, the carat weight, any one of those factors would drive every jewelry appraiser in New York wild. Where did you steal this? Bradley straightened up abruptly, pointing at my nose and shouting. Security! Call the police immediately. There's no way this kid could own a diamond of this caliber. This must be stolen property. I looked at him as if he were an idiot, a mocking curve touching the corner of my mouth. Bradley, do you think your family's pathetic little mine is the only place in the world that can produce diamonds? This thing is just some scrap I accidentally dug up while I was playing in the dirt in my backyard tonight. Bullshit! Bradley cursed loudly. He absolutely could not accept that a bottom-dwelling ant in his eyes could produce such a rare treasure. I shot her a cold glance before turning to the store manager, who was now completely catatonic. Appraise this diamond. The manager wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, donned white gloves, and with trembling hands, picked up the raw diamond to examine it closely. After a few minutes, he spoke in a tone that bordered on religious reverence. Sir, the quality of this raw diamond exceeds our daily evaluation parameters. A conservative estimate would be at least $15 million. $15 million? Chloe gasped, her body swaying as she nearly fainted. She looked at the $500,000 necklace Bradley had just bought her, and in an instant, it felt like a cheap dog collar. I let out a contemptuous laugh, reached out to take the diamond back from the manager, and then, right in front of them, casually tossed it in the air like a coin. Only $15 million? It seems the vision of your Pierce family is limited to just this. Fine, I'm in a good mood today. Consider this worthless pebble a gift to serve as your store's centerpiece. With that, I tossed the $15 million raw diamond directly into a nearby trash can. With a dull thud, everyone in the jewelry center gasped in unison. Are you insane? Bradley screamed in disbelief. He instinctively moved as if to rummage through the trash, but his pride ultimately stopped him. He froze in place, his face turning various shades of blue and white. I told you, this is just scrap from my backyard. The real show is just beginning. I looked coldly at Bradley. Wash your neck and wait. The Pierce family's monopoly myth will soon be a pile of ruins. I turned and strode out of the jewelry center, leaving behind a crowd of stunned onlookers and a bewildered Bradley standing by the trash can. Getting into the Lamborghini, I didn't head home. Instead, I drove straight to an abandoned mine on the outskirts of Detroit, the Black Rock Mountains. This mine had once produced a small amount of low-quality diamonds, but had been abandoned 10 years ago due to resource depletion. Now, it was nothing more than a desolate wasteland that no one cared about. But I didn't need it to have natural resources. What I needed was its massive network of tunnels reaching hundreds of meters underground and its absolute geographical seclusion. Upon arriving at the Black Rock Mountains, I pulled the crafting table directly from my system inventory. Now, it was time to elevate the Minecraft system into the industrial age. Earlier in my backyard, I hadn't just dug up diamonds. I had also unearthed a large amount of iron ore and coal. I used stone to craft a furnace and put the iron ore and coal inside, accompanied by a glow of intense heat. A few minutes later, several cold gleaming iron ingots were produced. I used the iron ingots to craft an iron pickaxe. Compared to the stone pickaxe, the iron pickaxe offered a qualitative leap in mining speed and durability. Armed with the iron pickaxe, I ventured deep into the abandoned tunnels. The rock here was harder, but under the laws of the system, everything turned into blocks that could be easily destroyed. Clink, clink, clink. I mined frantically deep underground. The iron pickaxe didn't just yield ordinary iron and coal. It could even mine gold ore. Soon, I used iron blocks to craft more advanced tools, redstone repeaters and dispensers. Although I hadn't mined actual redstone yet, I utilized the logic-based crafting function granted by the system. Using iron ingots, gold ingots, and a peculiar glowing moss found underground, I simulated the effects of redstone circuitry. I began laying tracks deep in the tunnels, manufacturing minecarts, and even crafted a prototype for an automated excavator controlled by simple redstone logic, a piston-driven device. By the time the night was over, I had hollowed out nearly half of the Black Rock Mountains. Underground, my inventory was stacked with tons of iron ingots, gold ingots, and over 200 top-tier raw diamonds. Furthermore, I had mined an extremely rare resource in the system, emeralds. When I emerged from the mine, covered in dust but high in spirits, watching the white light of dawn break over the horizon, I knew that my industrial empire had quietly taken shape beneath this abandoned mine. Back in the city, I contacted Veronica immediately. I need to buy the Black Rock Mountains and the surrounding 1,000 acres of land, as fast as possible. Money is no object. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before Veronica spoke in an extremely complex tone. Kid, what kind of treasure did you dig up? The mayor of Detroit just called me, saying the Pierce family is looking for you all over the world. I sneered. Tell them not to worry. I'll be paying them a personal visit with my treasure very soon. 3 days later, Veronica tossed a thick stack of land title documents onto the hood of my Lamborghini. $50 million. The Blackrock Mountains and the surrounding 1,000 acres are all yours now. But I still can't figure out why you'd buy that godforsaken abandoned mine. I smiled slightly, lifted a ragged burlap sack that looked like it was meant for potatoes from the passenger seat, and slammed it onto her hood with a thud. Open it and see. Veronica suspiciously untied the rope of the sack. With just one look inside, she froze as if struck by lightning. Inside the sack, neatly stacked, were 4 stacks, that is, 256, top-tier raw diamonds, identical to the previous one but even more perfect and massive. In the system inventory, identical items could stack up to 64. And I had simply grabbed 4 stacks. My God. Did you raid an alien treasury? Veronica's voice trembled so much her pitch changed. The professional composure she prided herself on was completely shattered in this moment. This is just a small portion of what I dug up last night when I was bored. I patted the sack, my gaze becoming incredibly sharp. Veronica, I want you to use all your underground networks and legitimate channels to flood the European and North American jewelry markets with these diamonds at 30% below market price. I want everyone in America to know that top-tier diamonds are now a dime a dozen. The value of diamonds is essentially built on the massive lie of scarcity. The reason the Pierce family could monopolize the market was by controlling the supply to maintain exorbitant prices. My strategy now was simple and brutal. Use absolute quantity and overwhelming quality to completely tear away their hypocritical veil. Veronica was an extremely intelligent woman. She understood my intention instantly. She took a deep breath, a wild light flashing in her eyes. You want to crash the Pierce family's entire foundation. Good kid. This is a crazy short sell that will go down in Wall Street history. Leave it to me. Over the following week, the global jewelry industry experienced an unprecedented earthquake. Hundreds of perfect giant diamonds, exceeding the limits of human cognition, poured into major trading centers like a torrential rain. From Fifth Avenue in New York to Bond Street in London, all the top jewelers went mad. No one cared about the Pierce family's expensive, impurity-filled diamond chips anymore. Everyone's eyes were focused on these mysteriously appearing perfect miracles. Panic spread through the capital markets faster than a plague. In just 3 days, the stock price of the Pierce Jewelry Group plummeted like a waterfall. From an original market capitalization of $10 billion, 60% evaporated instantly. Wall Street analysts screamed in terror on television that the monopoly myth of the diamond market had been completely crushed by a mysterious conglomerate. While I sat in my luxury penthouse, sipping a $100,000 bottle of Romani Conti and crafting more sophisticated automated redstone machinery at my system workbench, my phone rang. Caller ID, Bradley Pierce. I hit the speakerphone, and Bradley's frantic, almost tearful roar immediately erupted from the other end. Dexter, it was you, wasn't it? You're the one who got people to dump those diamonds of unknown origin into the market. Do you have any idea that you've ruined the entire industry? Our family's stock hit the limit down today. Oh, really? That's such a shame. I leaned back on the leather sofa, my tone as relaxed as if I were discussing the weather. I told you long ago. I have plenty of trash in my backyard. I just threw a little bit out randomly. Who knew the Pierce family's business empire couldn't even withstand a few bags of garbage? You bastard! This is illegal dumping. I'll have the FBI arrest you. Bradley howled hysterically. Just then, Chloe's sharp and panicked voice came through the phone. Bradley, the bank called and said they're calling in the loans early. What do we do? Your cards have been frozen. Hearing my ex-girlfriend's desperate voice, the smile on my face deepened. Bradley, say hello to Chloe for me. Tell her she'd better keep that $500,000 necklace, because it might be the only thing you can take to a pawn shop for a hot dog after you go bankrupt. Dexter, don't get too cocky. Bradley growled through gritted teeth. The Pierce family isn't dead yet. At this weekend I will show you all what true despair looks like. Manhattan, the penthouse of the Star Tower. Tonight's auction has gathered the pinnacle of wealth and power from across North America. Those titans, usually seen only on the covers of financial magazines, are now holding champagne flutes and engaging in hypocritical small talk. But I know their focus tonight is on only one thing: whether the teetering Pierce family can pull off a desperate counterattack with the legendary Heart of the Ocean, dressed in a black jacquard suit crafted overnight by top Italian tailors. I stepped into the magnificent hall accompanied by Veronica. As soon as I entered, I was met by the predatory glares of Bradley and Chloe. Bradley looked considerably haggard, his eyes sunken, yet he still maintained his arrogant, spoiled rich kid persona. Chloe, wearing a borrowed haute couture gown, clung to Bradley's arm and stared at me with a complex gaze, filled with jealousy, regret, and above all, a blustering malice. Dexter, you actually dared to show up. Bradley sneered as he approached, lowering his voice. You think you can topple us with a few worthless stones dug out of some mud pit? Tonight, I'll show you what a true heirloom looks like. Chloe straightened her back and added acidly. Exactly. A nouveau riche like you doesn't understand the meaning of history and heritage. The Heart of the Ocean once belonged to the Russian Tsar. How can your mass-produced industrial trash even compare? History and heritage? I laughed contemptuously. In the face of absolute capital, the heritage you're so proud of isn't even worth the paper you wipe your ass with. I ignored them and walked straight to the front row VIP seats. With the bang of the auctioneer's gavel, the event officially began. Several antiques and famous paintings were quickly sold, but these were just the warm-up. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the grand finale of the night. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer announced excitedly, pulling back the red cloth. Inside a bulletproof glass case, a massive deep blue diamond emitted an intoxicating glow under the spotlights. The next item up for bid is the Pierce family's rare treasure, a top-tier blue diamond weighing 100 carats, the heart of the ocean. The starting bid is $50 million. A collective gasp erupted from the audience. Although the Pierce family was currently in a state of chaos, the allure of this diamond remained irresistible. $55 million. A Wall Street tycoon raised his paddle. $60 million. The price skyrocketed. A long-absent look of ecstasy finally appeared on Bradley's face. He looked at me triumphantly, as if to say, "See, this is the strength of my family." Chloe was also trembling with excitement, seemingly seeing the hope of returning to her life as a wealthy socialite. $100 million. Bradley suddenly raised his own paddle. He was actually driving up the price, attempting to create an illusion that the Pierce family was still wealthy and powerful in order to stabilize the stock price. The audience erupted in an uproar. $100 million had already shattered the global record for a diamond auction. $100 million. Going once. $100 million. Going twice. The auctioneer's voice was trembling. Bradley looked at me provocatively, his eyes filled with the arrogance of a victor. Chloe went even further, giving me a direct thumbs down. I slowly stood up, straightened the hem of my suit, and, under the gaze of hundreds of pairs of eyes, pressed a button on my miniature walkie-talkie. "You can come in now." The words had barely left my lips when a thunderous boom echoed through the hall. The 2-story-high carved wooden doors at the back of the auction house were violently smashed open by a heavily modified Ford Raptor pickup truck. Amidst flying wood splinters, the pickup roared arrogantly into the magnificent venue, screeching to a halt right in front of the bulletproof glass display case. Screams erupted throughout the hall as security personnel drew their weapons. But the men Veronica brought had already seized control of the situation. I walked to the back of the pickup, patted the massive cargo bed, and looked coldly at Bradley and Chloe on the stage, who were now completely paralyzed with fear. "Bradley, $100 million for a broken stone, you really are quite the big spender." I pressed the remote control, and the truck's bed began to rise slowly. "However, I heard you really like diamonds, so I brought you a little greeting gift." Clatter, 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 accompanied by a deafening pouring sound. Hundreds of tons of top-grade raw diamonds, each the size of a fist, cascaded out of the truck bed like a waterfall. The massive pile of diamonds instantly smashed a deep crater into the expensive Persian rug, their dazzling brilliance drowning out every spotlight in the room and blinding everyone present. What the hell is this?" A Wall Street tycoon who had been bidding just moments ago fell to the floor in terror. Bradley collapsed directly onto the ground, his eyes rolling back, making meaningless gurgling sounds in his throat. His pride and joy, the heart of the ocean, looked like a piece of broken glass in a trash heap compared to this mountain of perfect giant diamonds. Chloe, meanwhile, went mad, throwing herself recklessly into the pile of raw diamonds, trying to grab them with her hands. But there were simply too many. She was buried inside, leaving only her head visible, distorted by extreme shock and regret. 100 tons of top-grade raw diamonds. Is that enough to buy out your heritage? I looked down at Chloe, my gaze as cold as ice without a hint of warmth. This kind of junk stone? I use it all to pave the paths in my backyard. After that epic auction, the Pierce family's diamond empire popped like a cheap, needle-pricked condom, completely obliterated. Early the next morning, headlines across major media outlets were on a loop showing Bradley being loaded into an ambulance. His family was saddled with over $10 billion in debt and officially filed for bankruptcy liquidation. As for Chloe, I heard she tried to sell that $500,000 necklace to pay her breach of contract fines, only to be kicked out onto the street by the pawnshop owner with the excuse that diamonds are currently cheaper than glass marbles. However, I couldn't be bothered to spare another glance at those two clowns. Crushing 2 ants didn't satisfy me, because I now possessed the power to completely subvert human civilization. Turning diamonds into dirt-cheap commodities was only the first step of my business empire. With a fortune large enough to buy several small countries, I purchased all the land within a 100-mile radius of the Blackrock mountain range and placed it under heavy military guard. Here, my Minecraft system finally reached its ultimate evolution. Carrying a top-tier diamond pickaxe crafted from diamonds, I followed the mine shafts all the way down, digging through granite, through the edge of the mantle, until I hit the physical limits set by the system, the indestructible bedrock layer. Beside a churning, scorching lake of lava, I found the substance emitting an eerie dark red glow. Ancient debris. After an extremely complex smelting process in the furnace, I fused them with gold ingots to finally obtain the strongest material in the game, netherite. Tools and armor forged from netherite wouldn't show so much as a scratch even from explosives. But that wasn't the most lethal part. The most lethal part was the tens of thousands of redstone ores I had excavated. In the real world, redstone was an absolute anomaly that ignored the second law of thermodynamics. It required no combustion, no solar energy. Through simple system logic circuit arrangements, it could continuously output extremely pure and infinite electrical energy. Using netherite as a shell, deep beneath the Blackrock Mountains, I built a super redstone energy matrix the size of the Pentagon. No roaring generators, no black smoke, only interlacing, flickering dark red lights, containing within the silence a massive energy capable of tearing the Earth apart. I founded the Vance Interstellar Energy Group. At first, those suit-clad oil tycoons and energy giants on Wall Street laughed so hard when they heard the news that their cigars fell into their laps. In their eyes, I was just a lucky bumpkin who got rich selling diamonds, actually dreaming of challenging the global energy lifeline they had monopolized for a century. The largest oil oligarch in Texas even mocked me publicly on television. If that kid named Dexter can light a single bulb with his glowing red rocks, I'll eat my leather boots tonight. I didn't engage in a Twitter war with him. I prefer to slap people's faces with facts. A week later, I cut all of Detroit's connections to the national power grid. While the city plunged into panic and the mayor called me frantically, I activated a portable redstone reactor, no larger than a suitcase, installed in the city center square. A faint red light flashed, and immediately following, the entirety of Detroit, millions of households, every skyscraper, all the city's streetlights, lit up instantly in the same second. The voltage was terrifyingly stable, without any surges or fluctuations. Subsequently, I bought 24 hours scrolling at space on the big screens in Times Square, announcing to the world with a single sentence: from today, Vance Energy will provide free electricity to the entire United States for a full month. We don't produce energy. We are merely nature's porters. This sentence became the final straw that broke the backs of the Wall Street capital giants. Free supply? Zero cost? No pollution? Infinite output? The traditional energy market suffered a nuclear-level destructive blow instantly. Oil futures prices plummeted into negative numbers within 30 minutes of opening. Coal and natural gas company stocks became waste paper, and trillions of dollars in market value vanished into thin air in a single day. Those Wall Street wolves who were mocking me just days ago were now all losing their minds. Outside the alloy gates of the Blackrock Mountain base, the area was packed with Rolls-Royces, Gulfstream private jets, and bulletproof helicopters. Those bankers, oil tycoons, and even world leaders who controlled the world's economic lifelines were now like a pack of begging stray dogs, braving the Detroit winter winds to form a 3-mile-long queue outside my gates. They wailed, begging me to acquire their companies, pleading for a bit of redstone energy franchising rights. Even if it was just a few scraps. I stood before the surveillance screens in the underground base, watching this group of once mighty figures now kneeling on the ground, a cold sneer curling at the corner of my mouth. Money? I was no longer interested in that. No, the very breath of this world had to follow the rhythm of my fingers. Desperate beasts always unleash their most frantic counterattacks just before death. When the Wall Street capitalists realized that money could no longer buy me and power could not force me to compromise, they finally tore off the mask of civilization and played the most primitive and violent card in human history. In the early hours of the 10th day after I announced free electricity from Vance Energy, piercing air raid sirens tore through the Detroit night sky. Veronica stumbled into my underground control room, her normally cold and elegant face now completely bloodless. Dexter, they've gone mad. The Pentagon, in conjunction with NATO, has launched 3 tactical nuclear missiles with a 100-kiloton yield at Blackrock Mountain under the name of Crimes Against Humanity and Monopoly. They'll hit in 3 minutes. Nukes? I raised an eyebrow, not only showing no panic but actually finding it somewhat amusing. It seems they've really reached their breaking point. You're still laughing? Those are nuclear weapons. Nukes that can wipe the entire Blackrock Mountain and the Detroit suburbs off the map. Veronica screamed in despair, closing her eyes to await death. Relax, Veronica. I patted her shoulder and turned toward the console. In the system's physical laws, there was a type of black-purple stone with a staggering blast resistance of 1200. In the game, even the god-tier monster the Wither couldn't damage it in the slightest. I opened my inventory, and with a thought, tens of thousands of obsidian blocks appeared out of thin air on the surface of the Blackrock Mountain base. They precisely assembled and locked together, forming a massive obsidian dome over 10 meters thick in less than 10 seconds, shielding the entire base beneath it. Just to be safe, I poured a bucket of ordinary water directly over the top of the dome. In Minecraft, water can absorb the destructive force of any explosion. Boom! Accompanied by 3 thunderous before the satellite monitoring screens, the Pentagon generals and Wall Street titans were raising champagne flutes, preparing to celebrate the final physical exorcism of the demon that had brought their empire to its knees. However, as the dust from the nuclear blast gradually cleared, the images transmitted back by the satellite caused everyone's smiles to freeze eternally on their faces. In the center of that radioactive scorched earth, which resembled a living hell, stood a massive, square fortress emitting a dark, black-purple luster, completely intact, far from being destroyed. Its surface didn't even have a single scratch. It continued to shimmer with a cold, mocking radiance. Newton's coffin lid had officially flown off into outer space, and Einstein would likely have torn up his theory of relativity on the spot. This is impossible. The Pentagon commander collapsed into his chair, his faith utterly shattered. Meanwhile, in the underground base, I watched those terror-stricken faces on the screen and knew it was time to end this boring farce. I opened my workbench and took out the ultimate gear I had crafted using countless rare resources. I donned a full set of netherite armor glowing with the ethereal purple light of protection 4, gear sufficient to let me take a bath in lava. Next, I tightly strapped a pair of grayish-white wings found in an underground ruin, an elytra, to my back. Finally, I pulled out an enchanted golden apple radiating a divine purple halo and took a heavy bite. Asterisk crunch. Asterisk a violent, surging power that felt as if it would overflow from my body instantly surged through me. Regeneration, absorption, resistance, fire resistance. Countless powerful status buffs lit up in the corner of my vision. Now, even if I stood at the epicenter of a nuclear explosion, not a single hair on my head would be singed. Ignoring Veronica, who was already staring in a daze, I activated the base's redstone piston door and stepped out of the obsidian fortress. Looking out at the devastated wasteland, I took a deep breath of air laced with radioactive dust, gripped a firework rocket in my left hand, and kicked off the ground with all my might. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk the firework rocket exploded beneath my feet. The elytra snapped open, and I transformed into a streak of purple light, soaring into the sky at supersonic speeds. The citizens of Detroit, the surrounding armies in the distance, and the global leaders staring intently through satellites all witnessed this miraculous scene. A man in dark black heavy armor, with wings on his back, not only walking out of a nuclear blast unscathed but flying toward the heavens like a god. I flew tens of thousands of meters high, coming to a halt above the stratosphere. Beneath me was the azure earth. Its silhouette was beautiful, but in my eyes, it had become a massive, ultimate sandbox composed of infinite blocks. I looked down upon the planet, the stinking gutters of the Detroit slums, the jewelry stores where Chloe and Bradley once flaunted their wealth, the Pentagon's nuclear buttons, the vaults of Wall Street. At this moment, they all became more insignificant than ants. I was once angry because I couldn't pay rent, pained by an ex-girlfriend's betrayal, and driven to revenge by the humiliation of a rich brat. But now, possessing the power to reshape the laws of physics, I suddenly felt that human greed and arrogance were utterly ridiculous. Revenge? I no longer needed revenge. When a person becomes a creator, does he still care about a speck of dust beneath his feet, hovering in space? I took from my inventory the ultimate miracle I had synthesized, a beacon constructed from diamond blocks, a nether star, and obsidian. I placed it midair in Earth's orbit. A massive, blindingly brilliant beam of light erupted from the center of the beacon, instantly piercing through Earth's atmosphere and illuminating the night sky of the entire Western Hemisphere. Along with this beam, an invisible force swept across the globe like a ripple, in every corner of the Earth. All modern weapons, all traditional energy sources, and the entire industrial system built upon old physics completely ceased to function in an instant. Reduced to scrap metal, global silence. I floated beside that divine beam of light, my gaze penetrating the clouds as if I could see the former wealthy heirs lining up for relief food and the elites kneeling in the streets to pray. Once, you thought this world belonged to you. I spread my arms, and my voice, through the laws of the system, thundered simultaneously in the mind of every human on Earth. With a thought, on the distant horizon as far as the eye could see, the rolling mountain ranges and oceans began to disintegrate and reorganize at a visible speed, slowly turning into giant blocks with sharp edges and pixelated grid lines. But now, the rules of the game have changed. I looked at the Earth, now plunged into total silence and awe, and a fanatical, domineering smile curled under my visor. Welcome to Minecraft. And that's a wrap, folks. If this story gave you that sweet dopamine hit and was more satisfying than peeling the plastic off a brand new TV, do me a massive favor. Obliterate that like button and hit subscribe. I'm locked in the content mine serving up fresh, ridiculously satisfying stories every single day. See you tomorrow for your next fix.